Today's guest is Piers Cawley. Piers is a folk singer in the traditional style in that he mostly sings unaccompanied. He's had his own series going for a while now on YouTube called Trad Song Tuesdays. I want to find out a bit more about this traditional way of singing and what is so appealing to Piers in it. Piers is a very interesting guy. He knows a lot about the subject and he provides some fascinating insights. He's also extremely funny and very prone to breaking into spontaneous song. So I really hope you'll enjoy what he has to say here. I will warn you, there is a bit of strong language involved when we got carried away. Welcome, Piers.
Thank you.
So,
thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. So, tell me a little bit about your journey into traditional music, into traditional, let's say, British folk music. What's drawn you to that?
It's been, as the old saying is, it's been a long, strange trip. When I was a kid, one of my mum and dad's friends, my aunt's best friend, was a lady called, at the time, Kathy Norton, who was a member of a folk group with some friends of hers in York called Bryony, and they passed a tape to my dad, and that's probably the first English traditional folk I heard. And they were brilliant. They were three women singing in harmony with hammer dulcimer, Appalachian dulcimer, and I think there was a guitar, but harmony voices, which is just my thing, really. And Kathy was just someone we knew. She I don't think she ever babysat for me, but she was that kind of thing. And she then went on through the years, became Kathy Yarwood, was a member of Artisan with Dave Webber and Annie Fentiman, and is now Kathy Barclay, and I believe getting together with Dave Webber and Annie Fentiman again, because they're moving out to be near them. So I'm really looking forward to hear that. But that sort of happened off on the side. Then meanwhile, I sort of was. I'm from South Yorkshire, and we moved into a little village called Scrooby, just into the Nottinghamshire border, the classic sort of East Midlands heavy metal country. And that was in my youth. It was stuff like Saxon and Iron Maiden and AC/DC, of course. Yeah. Stuff that I listen to now, and it's still brilliant. And but I kind of, and then at, when would it be? University, I got heavily into the Waterboys. And this was around the time we were all waiting for the album that became Fisherman's Blues. And that came out. And you do that thing, that certainly a thing my dad used to do as well, was when he heard something he liked, he would do this thing of listening back. So he tells the story of hearing the Rolling Stones and listening to, being a fan and hearing their interviews and them talking about the old black guys in the Delta and the prison music and stuff like that. And then ordering Murderer's Home, the Alan Lomax collection from Safeway, from Smithsonian Folkways or whoever it was, at their local record shop. And I mean, it was bewilderingly expensive for a young lad on pocket money. So they would, of course, those were in the days when you had a listening booth. Yeah. So they took this record into the listening booth at the thing, listened to both sides as many times as they could get away with, and then came away and said, "Nah, I didn't like it." And people complain about Napster, right? It's an eternal problem.
Listening booths are killing music,
But and he would tell me stories about that, and he had records by Booker T. Oh God, it wasn't Booker T. James. It was Booker Wash. Oh God, name's gone. Junko Partner. Great record of New Orleans piano blues. And that kind of taught me that if you hear a thing and you like it, what you do is you go and you listen to the influences. So I was a huge fan of the Waterboys. Still am, really. Although I am still saddened by the fact that I think of him by his Twitter name, Mick Puck, the lead singer, has discovered that all those keys he used to sing in were not the right keys for his voice, and has discovered the joys of the capo. And the only problem is they may be more comfortable to sing in, but they do not sound anywhere near as thrilling these days. But, it's great. You listen to those records and you can hear a man in trouble with his voice, and it sounds fabulous. But anyway, so they were huge. Their primary influence was Van Morrison. And so I went off to listen to Van Morrison. And the first Van Morrison record I bought was Van Morrison and the Chieftains. And it got me just absolutely and I, for the next 4 or 5 years, I was a plastic paddy. I was singing Carrick Fergus and I'll Tell Me Ma and all that stuff, and was discovered folk festivals and then bumping back into Cathy Yarwood, which was something of a surprise. And also I was living in Northampton and started going to the Souls and Eels Folk Club, because when you sat at home by yourself, you want somewhere to go. And certainly in the Northampton area at the time, you could go out and make folk music every night of the week. There were sessions, there were sing-arounds, there was the folk club in Northampton. There was Matt Armour had a really good session on a Sunday in Stony Stratford, and the stables in they ran that as a great folk club as well. So there was plenty of music to see and get involved with, and some great musicians as well. The first time I ever heard a melodeon was upstairs at the Souls and Eels pub at the Souls and Eels Folk Club in Northampton, and this bloke came on. And it was Simon Kerr, and he was a guy who could make a melodeon sound like a musical instrument. And the next time I saw someone play the melodeon, it was a bread and butter Morris side, and it was a shock. But yeah, just saw some wonderful people then, and was going to folk clubs and folk festivals and singing "I wish I had you in Carrickfergus." I mean, I can still sing it.
Well, actually, you've got a YouTube video, I think, up there.
Yes, I put one up for and that was sort of my repertoire for the longest time. And then I butted into a conversation with the woman who later turned out to be my wife at Chippenham Folk Festival, and she still is a great singer of English traditional material, and she introduced me to people like the Watersons and Martin Carthy. The first time I heard Martin Carthy, I did not understand what was so great about him. I absolutely hated it. And then the next time I saw him, it was like, oh shit, oh right, I get it now. And I'm sort of a couple of years older than Liza. So we're of that generation where we were almost always the youngest person in the folk club.
Right.
And the sad thing is that until very recently, I've always been the youngest person in the folk club, and I'm 52 now. And if that doesn't tell you what's wrong with folk clubs, I don't know what does.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking actually about this with a friend recently. You know, that the impression of folk clubs is an older guy with a big beard standing up and singing unaccompanied songs, and then he immediately mentioned your name, and I felt terribly embarrassed because I thought, well, that's absolutely not any denigration of what you do and who you are. You've actually been doing this, as I said, doing this series of largely unaccompanied song called Trad Song Tuesdays on your YouTube channel. And some of those songs are absolutely epic. You know, they're 6 to 8 minutes of.
Tamlin is pushing 10 minutes.
Yeah, and Fair Annie, you know, is more than 6 minutes, and so on. So first of all, how do you even remember them? And secondly, how do you go about approaching that? Because as an unaccompanied singer, that's it. It's your voice. And how do you sort of approach that to be able to hold the listener's interest, which you do extremely well?
There's a couple of things. There's the learning, and you kind of have to want to learn it. It's that simple. Every song I sing, there is certainly of the big stuff, the stuff I take the time to learn. There is stuff on the Trad Song Tuesday list that I don't remember anymore, that I was singing from a lyric or I was cramming to get in because it was the right song for that theme that week, and I was keen and had time on my hands. And there are the ones that absolutely stick, and there are the ones that still haven't gone in, but I know I'm going to learn. So the House Carpenter has got this amazing opening voice. Fair maids are a shining over valleys and towns. There lived a fair maid, and her name it was Miss Brown. And it's that fair maids are a shining over valleys and towns, and it's clearly a mishearing. It makes no bloody sense. And it's such a beautiful turn of phrase. You go, I've got to learn the whole song for that. The whole song's kind of icky, and she gets murdered for falling pregnant, and it's all a bit gruesome. But it's also got this the murderer is has this fabulous the captain is on he's shipped aboard a boat because it's a war, and he's murdered the lass before he set off because he didn't want a child at home to worry about. And except that's not mentioned until later anyway. And there's and the captain says there's a murderer on board, and we can't, this is why the boat is no longer is we're not getting wind. And we get this fabulous verse. Up steps a sailor, indeed, sir, not I, and up steps another, indeed, sir, not I, and up steps young William to stamp, curse, and swear, indeed, sir, not I, sir, I vow and declare. And it's that over protesting. You kind of know he's guilty. There's those things in some of those songs where you kind of pivot from this incredible humanity of clearly these people are, the song from 200 years ago, the person represented is clearly just like me. And then in the very next verse, he does something utterly alien.
Yeah.
And it's this really odd thing of that I find really interesting about that material. So that is kind of what drives me to learn stuff. There'll be something in the song that absolutely catches my interest, and or a turn of phrase, or there's a fabulous one in the Gay Goshawk that I've still not learned, where it has, with cheery cheeks and rosy lips she laid a smile on him. It's almost, I think it's the last verse of the song, and it's like the songs, it's a 10-minute song, and it's all about getting to that line.
Right.
And you just, one of these days, it's on Pete Morton's album of traditional songs.
Yeah.
Which is well worth seeking out, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, so that's the why of the learning.
Yeah.
And once you've got a why, and with the big long songs, you've got the before you start to learn them, you kind of know them. You know the shape of the story, and the shape of the story massively helps. It's much harder with songs where the verses don't really have a relationship from one to the next. They're much harder to learn. And then, I mean, I used to just keep singing along to the CD or a recording I'd made of myself until it was all there. But I went to the Swannanoa Gathering in North Carolina, and had an absolute road to Damascus moment when I saw when I heard a singer called Sheila K. Adams. I was down for this big list of stuff about learning to sing the blues and stuff like that, and blah 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 blah. And at the beginning of the week, they had the instructors' concerts from everybody, and they were doing a bit of a concert and pitching what they were teaching. And Sheila had got, I think, 2 or 3 classes, one of which was on the big ballads from the Appalachian tradition, and another was on meeting house songs, and I think there was another one, can't remember what. And I just went to the office of the thing and completely changed my entire curriculum. So I was doing all of Sheila's classes, and I don't regret that for a second. She was just amazing. And she's describes herself as a 7th generation ballad singer, and her great aunt Basil, can't remember. Anyway, Granny Basil, as she was called, was collected by Cecil Sharp.
Okay.
In the Appalachian collection.
Right.
So her family's material is in songs from the Southern English songs from the Southern Appalachians. That amazing,
Yeah.
an amazing material. And her family did not have a copy until she made a bit of a fuss about it. You know, they have an interesting relationship with Sharp. But anyway, she talked at one point, and it's the thing that, I mean, there's plenty of stuff that stuck, but the thing that really stuck was a technique she had about, or that the family had about how they taught songs knee to knee. And what they would do was they'd have a nice long job, you know, like preserving beans or something like that. And they'd be sat on the porch, the two of them, facing each other. And Granny would sing, oh, I don't know, I first come into this country in 1749. I saw many fellow viewers, but never saw mine. I viewed all around me and found I was alone, and me a poor stranger and a long ways from home. And Sheila would sing that verse back. Mm-hmm. And as she finished that verse, Granny would then sing, it's not this long journey. That's not the right verse. But anyway, would sing the second verse.
Right.
And Sheila would then sing the first verse and the second verse. And Granny would sing the third verse. And Sheila would sing the first verse, the second verse, the third verse. And Granny would sing the fourth verse. And when you're considering that some of these are like Tam Lin, I mean, Prince Sarah is pretty short. But if you think about how long that process is going to take.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, it works. Mm-hmm. I learned, the first song I did it with was Fair Annie. And I sat down there and I went, blah, blah, played the first verse of the Pete Bellamy recording on Fair Annie, sang it back, played the second verse, sang the whole thing back, played the third verse, sang the whole thing back, played the fourth verse, sang the whole. Did that twice. And the weird thing is you'd think, but how do you remember the last verse? But I promise you do.
Yeah.
I went through it twice and I had it. And then of course, there's the process of learning how you sing it.
Yeah.
And that's the that's the one that takes the time.
Yeah. You know, I said it's a very exposed way of performing, and it requires, I think, a lot of discipline in not only in how you pace it, how you tell it, how you sing it, but also, of course, vocal discipline, because it's very difficult without having the pitches of an instrument to follow to actually maintain the pitch and the correct key, let's say, all the way through.
I can tell you're an instrumentalist because it's not.
Okay.
It's genuinely not hard. Okay. I mean, I started off, I was singing in church choirs at school. I can't sing in a choir these days. It's just, and the stuff that we did that we really enjoyed, that was really good, was unaccompanied polyphony. We were the Magnus Black, who was the choir master at Doncaster Parish Church, was a very high church. So on occasion we'd do things like the Bird Catholic masses and things like that, and they were astonishing. And you get that feel for how voices interweave. Now maybe it is that simply that early discipline of holding a pitch, but holding a pitch is less important than you think it is, as long as it changes gradually.
Yeah. And actually, I think relative pitch does that anyway. There is all these kind of tricks in music that, know, where you kind of, and I think barbershop music, for instance, depends on that kind of, not quite the even-tempered sevenths and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so. But that's actually why it sounds so good, because of course, vocal music, you can sing proper thirds.
That's right. Yeah.
Rather than that flat thing that's on your guitar or a piano keyboard. But as a vocalist, as an unaccompanied vocalist, you simply don't have to worry about that stuff. I don't have to worry about counting.
Okay.
I don't have to think about, oh Christ, I've got this instrument here and I've reached the end of this note and I've taken my breath. Now I've got to wait for him to catch up or whatever. I can sing the damn note. So in some respects, it's incredibly freeing. Yeah. And it's less of a discipline than you might think it is, coming from playing with an instrument. I mean, yes, time absolutely matters. Even with even with a ballad, where kind of what you're after is some of that freedom around time, so you can be a bit elastic. In the end, the one arrives and you need to be on it, or you need to be consciously behind it because it's funky or whatever it may be, but you do at least need to hit that one. Now, to a certain extent, as a vocalist, you can move them, you can move it a bit in weird ways, but you've got to be there for it. And as you're singing, if you're singing a shanty, it's utterly essential. And there are singers who are brilliant ballad singers who really find singing a shanty quite hard, because suddenly that freedom that they've got is the fact that this is a work song, and this is, you know, if you listen to those if you listen to those amazing recordings from Parchment Farm of Black Betty and stuff like that, where there's a gang of axes, 4 axes working in time to this one bloke singing, you cannot fuck that up, because people will get hurt.
Yeah, someone's going to lose a finger.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the other discipline is the thing that I found as well, with the big old song, especially the big songs, really, is actually the less you do in terms of interpretation, the more likely you are to hold the attention of the people listening. It's really odd. You think, oh, I'll dramatize it, and actually, your problem is that the way you hear a ballad, the emotion you read from it as a singer, you need to know what you think it is, absolutely. And the emotion you can convey isn't necessarily the same feelings as that evokes in a different listener. And if you start going with, this is how I'm reading this, and your listener is off somewhere else, you can't do that magic thing that happens in theatre where the audience and the work sort of magically create something in midair as this collaborative imagined structure, and it's different for every audience member, but very, very similar, but different. And if you do too much, I find with a song, you're in danger of getting in front of the song. Sort
of distracting people from it.
Yeah, I mean, the cliche is song, not singer.
Yeah.
And it's sort of true and it's sort of bollocks at the same time, because the singer absolutely does matter, but at the same time, the more egoless you can be as a singer, you're a vehicle of the song, and you know, technically you might be good at it and people like the sound of your voice and like the way you go through the song, but I find that if I consciously work on being in a performance, it gets in the way of me being in the song, and that's just what I find anyway.
Have you been in a band situation? I mean, you do seem to play a fairly mean banjo. Do you play other things, or have you really just tried to focus on unaccompanied singing?
The banjo is very much the threat of a banjo most of the time. I do not practice it anywhere enough. The problem is that I'm 42 years ahead of any instrument I pick up now. And admittedly, you know, most of that learning happened in the first 10 years, let's be honest, but it's still, you know, with an instrument, you pick it up and it's not as direct as the voice. It's a mediated process, and the conscious thing of how am I playing this damn thing gets in the way of the unconscious thing of how am I singing this damn song, and I find it quite hard. And but as for band situations, I have sung with a chap who turned out to be an absolute gaslighting asshole to a friend of mine, so we don't sing together anymore. And in many respects, I miss him terribly because our voices blended so fucking well. We sounded so good, and I can't because he's an arsehole. I'm working, or I started working with someone before lockdown, but she's in Sheffield and I'm here, so we can't really do that, although we're planning on swapping videos and stuff like that. Yeah. And hopefully that will turn into something. But again, that's unaccompanied harmony work. Right. I've not really done band work. I love to give it a go. The nearest I come to it is the mucking about on Twitch singing karaoke.
Yeah.
It's a hoot, and playing all those songs that, singing some of those songs that I loved when I was a kid as well. I still love, really. I just don't really. I stopped buying pop and chart music in about 1990 something. So it's got to have been really, really popular for if it made it into my consciousness for anything from about 95, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just tell me about Twitch. Was that kind of just a boredom thing from lockdown, or is it really that need for connection, or was it just a nostalgia trip?
I picked it up. I just enjoy singing.
Yeah.
You know, I picked it up shortly before it came out of beta, so that's just over a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been sort of mucking about on Twitch, half-heartedly streaming Elite Dangerous, which is a video game I play. And I saw Twitch Sings coming along, and I thought, well, that looks like it might be fun. I'll give that a go. And downloaded it and gave it a go, and it was an absolute hoot. I mean, it didn't hurt that they got Copperhead Road and Man of Constant Sorrow in the initial tranche of songs that were available, which are songs I absolutely love. So I thought, I've got to have a go at that. And then it just, snowballed. You start hanging out in the chats of other people who are playing it, because it's a nice company thing to do. And before I know it, I'm swapping songs with people. And the duet feature of it, where you sing half a song and then the other person sings the other half, is just... I think it's a brilliant, brilliant thing. It just it's a huge. I wish there were more folkies on there, because they've now got the open mic thing where you can record whatever the hell you like as a half duet seed. Except it turns out I can't do a performance of Tam Lin as an open mic video, because it stops after 8 minutes, and I've got 3 verses left.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I think Fair Annie fits in there, but that's about it.
I'm not sure anybody else would be able to do the other part of Tamlin with you anyway. So
I did do the Rattling Bog.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the adding on song.
Okay.
Where you end up with on that bird there was a wing, a rare wing, a rattling wing on the bird, and the bird on the egg, and the egg in the nest, and the nest on the leaf, and the leaf of the twig, and the twig on the branch, of the branch on the tree, and the tree in the hole, and the hole in the bog, and the bog down in the valley, and you keep going for as long as you possibly can. I did that as an open mic scene. I think about 2 people had a go, and made a passable fist of it, but it was definitely it was kind of there almost as a bet. And there's another one I've put up there where I absolutely sweated for about 3 days putting proper karaoke lyrics underneath it, so that people have a problem with finding the verse. And the tunes basically should be coming around the mountain, so it's not hard to pick up. And that's been done by a couple of people, but we'll see how that goes. But that was fun working out how to do it. And the gadget I've got that lets me use my real camera rather than a web camera also lets me plug my laptop in and send its output into Twitch Sings, so I could just go, "What? There you go." So that made making that really easy, and it's a fun place to hang out and sing. See, I mean, I can't remember who it was said. Scratch a folkie, you will find a rocker.
I don't want to bring the mood down too much, but one of the things I think a lot of musicians have been really struggling with the whole lockdown thing, not just because of the financial constraints and not being able to perform live and all that, but also just trying to keep your spirits up and feel like you should be creating, but then maybe can't because of your mental state. How's it been for you? Have you had strategies that have helped you cope with this situation?
Mostly trying to tamp down the fury.
Yeah.
As you know, if you've seen Stay the Fuck at Home, and
I was going to ask you about that actually. Yeah,
you kind of know where I stand on this.
Yeah.
Strategies? No, it's just up and down. A thing I've found that's helped is absolutely anchoring the Thursday night let's pretend I'm in a folk club thing, which means I've done more folk club gigs in the last 3 weeks than I'd probably done in the previous 10 years because. This is the you were talking about the cliche of the bearded bloke singing an unaccompanied folk song.
Yeah,
you only see those people these days as floor singers.
Right.
See, when I was first coming into folk clubs, there were people like Johnny Collins, who was your classic bearded bloke singing unaccompanied folk songs. He did take a guitar with him. If you ever saw him live, he was great. He got very well known as a shanty singer, but that wasn't really his stuff. He was a classic southern Sussex style singer and a brilliant singer of chorus songs especially. And you'd see him at the folk club and he'd have a guitar and he'd get the guitar out and it would be tuned, and very occasionally he'd take a note from it. But the rest of the time he was singing unaccompanied songs, generally really good chorus songs that everyone joins in with. The stuff that doesn't really play on, I've found I can't really do it effectively on YouTube, because the magic of a chorus song is that every fucker joins in.
Everyone joins in, yeah.
And that's why Stay at Home is so good, because people did, and I am endlessly grateful to the people who did, so that there's a sense of a proper chorus on it. But if I did Rolling Home as a video, it doesn't have the thing that makes it catch fire in a folk club, that is everybody joining in. So the videos are great in some sense, but they're not a very sensible commercial thing for me for getting bookings.
Right.
Because unless you're in a very specific folk club, and there are a few of those folk clubs about, you do not want two 40-minute sets of a bloke singing ballads. No matter how good the ballads are, you don't want that. You want someone who can entertain. And the only way to demonstrate that you can entertain a folk club is to turn up at a folk club and entertain a folk club or an arts centre or whatever. In his later years, we were living in Gateshead at the same time as Lou Killen. Her later years, I'm terribly sorry. She transitioned while we were there. Mm-hmm. And she talked about a gig that she did down in London where she took the concertina. She was one of the first people to use the English concertina in a folk club setting. Did you know that? And one of the first people to sing Pleasant and Delightful, which still astonishes me. But anyway, she took the concertina down, did this gig, and she was playing the concertina and doing Pleasant and Delightful and stuff like that. And it was, I think it was the Magpie's Nest down in London, which is one of those wonderful folk clubs that actually has people of all ages in it. Mm-hmm. And she said that the thing was that she's doing the concert, and there's that thing that you see with a younger audience sometimes is that the phone is there and there's the glow from the phone, and you're not quite sure if they're listening. And you get some older performers and older folk club people getting really cross about that sort of thing. And I'm very much of the opinion that you have no idea. When someone's got the phone up, they could well be tweeting, "I'm sat in this folk club, and Luke Killen is fucking awesome. You should be here." Or indeed just chatting to the person 2 seats down the row, going, "Aren't these people great?" Without wanting to say it, but still wanting to communicate. All sorts of reasons for having a phone up. Yeah. So I'm very much of the opinion if someone's got a phone out, I mean, they're there. They've paid their ticket price. Who cares?
Yeah, it doesn't bother. I don't like it when people talk constantly while you're singing.
No, absolutely.
That's really disrespectful, but it does happen, But,
context matters, though. If I'm in a folk club that is in the public bar of a pub, and there are people in there who've just come for their regular pint and they want to have a chat,
fair enough.
Then if I can't, or if the performers can't grab their attention enough to make them be quiet, or the folk club organizer hasn't put enough separation between them, that's not their fault. You're invading their pub. The open mic's similar. It's you've got context, always context. Anyway, and those settings, the folk club in a public bar, are absolutely my favourite place to be in a folk club. I think they're brilliant because you just, if we hide away in back rooms, how on earth are we ever going to convince people that there's this vibrant form of music that they maybe want to listen to? Yeah. So anyway, Lou done the thing with the concertina and put down the concertina to sing some ballad or another. And she said, as she started singing it, she noticed there was a different quality of silence in the room, and there weren't any faces lit up by technology anymore. And she gave the rest of the concert without any accompaniment, and had that absolutely people listening. It's Lou Killen. You're gonna fucking listen. She was amazing. And I found that absolutely inspirational. I fear that there's a distrust sometimes on the part of club organisers and bookers that the solo unaccompanied folk bloke or folk girl cannot hold the attention of their audience. And I think they have I think they don't quite trust their audience to enjoy. But at the same time, I think if you said to someone he's an unaccompanied vocal singer and he's going to do 2 40-minute sets, there will be people thinking, what?
Yeah.
But actually, it's been my experience of, on a couple of occasions when I've been in that situation and watching and talking to people like Lou, that actually, if audiences have the chance to hear it, it absolutely captivates, because it's not something you hear every day.
Yeah. And when it works, I think it's amazing. You know, I think of like Mike Waterson or Anne Briggs. You know, it's just, it is captivating. But I do understand why people, if that's their first encounter with folk music, might find it's a little bit of a struggle. I mean, there's one thing I wanted to ask you actually is, you know, you really are rooted in this traditional song. I don't know.
I'm not really. I'm a first generation singer. My parents didn't make music. My my tradition comes from CDs.
Okay. Well, I meant from in the way that your repertoire, what you perform tends to be that. I mean, you've obviously written things like "Stay the Fuck at Home," which is fantastic. But you know, I guess my question is that, you know, some of these songs, and you talked a little bit about it earlier, that the fact that, you know, you have these kind of wonderful old twisted tales, but also some of them are pretty icky. These cautionary tales, but based on the fact of, you know, the very old patriarchal view of things.
Yes.
But how do you feel like, because for me there is emotion and meaning, but how do you feel like that's expressed in these kind of old songs? How do you find something that connects to you? And you talked about language, but, you know, there needs to be this emotional feeling about the song, I think, when you...
I mean, there are some songs I will never sing. I'm not going to sing Little Sir Hugh. You know, the old horrific anti-Semitic stuff. There are songs that I won't sing because as a old white bloke, they come across as they're leering songs. You know, that some of the stuff on the Bird in the Bush collection with Annie Briggs and anyway, classic Topic recordings of Frankie Armstrong, A.L. Lloyd. Lots of A.L. Lloyd's material is just, for me, and lots of the material that A.L. Lloyd brought into the tradition, some of which he probably wrote, are for me just a little too leering in my. But I love to hear them. But they're ones that I feel I can't quite get close to. But if someone else wants to sing them, I'm delighted to hear and join in. I do a version of the Cuckoo's Nest that's that I'm kind of okay with. I do 9 Times a Night, which is almost certainly written by Bert Lloyd, and it's just lovely because it upsets some of those relationships. I ended up writing a different last verse to The Sweet Nightingale because that kind of badgering, oh, go on, and then she marries him. Fuck off. Yeah. But I think that to a certain extent, that's always happened. I mean, I recently learned that brilliant verse in Hal and Toe of take the scorn and wear the horns, that was the toast when you were born, was written by Mike Waterson for so yeah. Cheeky little bugger, wasn't he? Amazing songwriter.
Yeah.
And there are the ones where you just have to be a bit careful about contextualizing. There are ones like Bill Norrie, which are horrific. You know, where at the end of it, you think it's going to be a nice, jolly little adultery number, and it turns out, and the husband comes out, finds out what's going on, comes out, chops his head off, and brings it back to his wife and throws it at her, and she picks it up and clasps it to her womb and says, "Once I was full of this boy as the plum is of the stone," and the whole song just goes, "What the fuck?" And it's awful, but I find it artistically satisfying as a song. But there are others where you just, no, I can't get near that. And there are others where clearly, I mean, Fair Annie, the man in that is a monster, but at least he gets his comeuppance. Yeah, that's it. And there are others where you just have to, be a bit careful in introducing. This is just not right.
It's a really interesting thing, because obviously there's been a huge, I think, upsurge in awareness of just how awful some people in the industry have been. Yeah. I'm not just talking about folk, but in wider music and film and media,
and the wider creative industries.
And just how abusive and some of the relationships are between people with power and people who produce the creative force behind it. Yeah. And so that has brought a real awareness with the song, and there is this idea of people sometimes being able to separate the artist from the music, and in other cases not. And I think that there's always the personal line there. But I think this is a really interesting thing as well that you kind of touched on here, is that the when you go back and look at those songs, it is difficult to sing them as they were. I covered Black Waterside, which is a fantastic song. I absolutely love it. I love Anne Briggs' version of it, which is really why I wanted to do it. And but there's just a few things in there which just made me uncomfortable, and I just changed the lyrics a little bit. And it's still that same song. I mean, there's still bits of it which I think are a little bit, nasty. The girl gets fooled, and she's kind of lost and all of that sort of thing. But there were some racial overtones in there that I didn't like, and there's a sort of criticism of the Irish and that stuff. So I do think that updating these things is okay, because
absolutely
they have been.
I think it's always been something that's happened, whether consciously or unconsciously. I think it's interesting listening to Martin Carthy doing battle with Prince Heathen over the years. I don't know why he finds it worthwhile, I must confess. It's an awful song, but clearly there's some. But the tune's amazing, and there's stuff in her attitude early on that's amazing. But at the end of it, it's just, and it's not really, as far as I can tell, it's not really fixable. Yeah. But at the same time, it is in some sense a historic document of the awful way we have been in terms of our attitudes and stuff like that. And Martin, you're never in any doubt that Martin thinks it's deplorable behaviour. You've got that. You're not as John said when Faye Heald said when I was talking about something, and I find it quite tricky. And she said, "You're not going to these songs for dating advice. You're just not."
That's very true.
That is absolutely brilliant. But there are variants of the week before Easter that I don't particularly want to sing. I sing Sheep, Crook and Black Dog with the very strong feeling that she's well shot of him, the lad who commits suicide at the end of it. Is like, clearly just there's all these proto-incels in folk song that are just you just want to slap them. But at the same time, the sort of tradition in the way folk music is presented is that when it's presented live, performers contextualize. When it's presented on record, we are the last beating heart, the last redoubt of the sleeve note. And people still take the time to explain the songs, explain their sources, where they got them from. You'll still find that on even the most trendy forward-thinking folk musician, you will usually have a couple of lines on why and where.
Right.
And I think that is quite important to contextualizing some of this material that on at first blush is kind of indefensible.
Yeah.
It's awful, but the tune's lovely.
And I've actually I think we're talking about Stay the Fuck at Home, which is to explain to everyone is a song that you wrote about the current lockdown situation, but that actually uses I think a traditional tune, right?
No, it's tuned by John Tams.
Okay.
And it's John Tams's crypto lefty anthem, as are all of John Tams's anthems. He responded. I sent him some emails saying, are we all right about using your thing, and how much of a share do you want on the PRS form? Not that I've seen a PRS check for it. One of these fine days. And he wrote me a lovely letter back about thank you for doing it, and also complimented me on keeping the sort of proud lefty anti-establishment thing of the lyric, because there's plenty of parodies of it that kind of let that bit drop, because the tune's great, the structure of the song is great. We lifted it's not just me, it was written by Heather Charlton, Helen Edwards and Vicky Appleton Fielden were also involved in writing it. I feel I should credit those, because the arc of John's song with the structure of the verses is so easy to we kind of nicked that as well. So we tried to keep it so that at least the first lines of each one sounded a little bit and echoed some of the original material, and that was fun to write. But no, not originally a traditional tune at all. But yeah,
one of those tunes that manages to sound
feels like it ought to be. Yes.
It should be.
Yeah. And then
that's quite a skill to write that. Then
yeah. There's so many ballads that are you kind of don't notice that. Apparently, when Bellamy put a tune to Kipling's The Road to Mandalay, he thought he'd written an original tune until his then wife, he sung it to his then wife Anthea and said, "I've written this tune for The Road to Mandalay." You daft bugger, it's 10,000 miles away. It absolutely is. And Danny Deever, until someone pointed this out to me, the tune to Danny Deever is Derwent Water's Farewell. And it's one of those things, until it was pointed out, I never noticed. I know both those songs. I don't sing Derwent Water's Farewell. I bloody well should do, because it's brilliant. And it's another one of those ones that you can take it out and it's not at all problematic.
Yeah.
You can just sing it without fucking about with it in any way, really. And but yeah, so that was a bit of a surprise, that the ones you don't notice. And I'm sure I when I wrote the Child of the Library tune, I spent ages trying to think where I'd nicked that tune from. I think I'm now pretty sure it's original, but it was because as a singer you don't write tunes, you just sing them and think that sounds right. And until lockdown, I wrote precisely 2 songs in my life, and they kind of fell on me, both of them. And again, the song was literally, I couldn't write you the notes for it, but I could sing it to you, sort of thing. It just the tune arrived with the song. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where songs come from. I don't know where tunes come from. I don't even quite understand where audiences come from.
I think it's best not to question these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let it be this magic black box.
There is this thing, isn't there? If you're a musician or a singer, and you do what you do, and as an unaccompanied singer, I'm a fairly rare bird. I understand that, and I'm always slightly mystified that people find what I do hard, because it's breathing, it's just a thing. You can do this. Hey, anybody can do this. Why on earth do you want to come out and pay to hear someone do this when you could be doing it at home? You could be doing it at home with material that you have control of, with your friends, and making music together, and it's fucking awesome. And you should bloody well give it a go, because it's honestly far more fun than sitting in an audience listening to somebody else do it. It's just, why are you here?
That's a perspective as a performer that I've never quite considered, but actually it makes a lot of sense. Oh,
you wanna pay me to do this? Whoopee!
Yeah.
I won't ask the question.
Yeah, probably best not to open with that. You know? Like, what the fuck are you lot doing here?
Maybe in a comedy club.
Yeah. Well, Piers, I think that's probably a good moment to wrap up the conversation and leave them laughing as you go, as Joni Mitchell said.
I hope we've not spent too long on your cameras shut down. But
it did shut down partway too, but never mind. Oh, well. People just get a nice black screen, and I think you were talking at the time, so it's
awesome.
All good.
I probably was talking at the time. That's the kind of thing I do.
Piers, it's been amazing to talk to you, and thank you so much for your insight into the songs and for for the humour and for a great conversation. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
Always happy for an excuse to blather about folk songs and perform. It's great fun. Nice talking to you. Pretty Betsy, don't fail, I will carry your pail, and it's home to your cot we will go. And you shall hear the fun tale of the sweet nightingale as she sings in the valley below. As she sings in the valley below. Pray leave me alone, I have hands of my own, and along with you, sir, I'll not go. For to hear the fun tale of the sweet nightingale, nor to walk in the valley below, nor walk in the valley below. Pray sit yourself down with me on the ground, on the bank where these primroses grow, and you shall hear the fond tale of the sweet nightingale as she sings in the valley below, as she sings in the valley below. Well, he kept up this talk till he got kicked in the fork, and he fell where the primroses grow. And she's still not afraid for to walk in the shade, nor go down in the valley below, nor go down in the valley below.